Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight we have so much to discuss. With our government being unraveled at a record speed, mass firings of federal workers, the deletion of departments and agencies, the blocking of entry uh, into the Department of Education by a contract worker from duly elected government Congress people, members of Congress. On top of that, if that weren't enough, Trump has issued tariffs to our North American neighbors, Canada and Mexico, both tied to our automotive industry, especially Canada. There's just it's just so much unrest and so much craziness going on right now. And so we're going to try to unpack some of it. We're going to have a discussion about all of this and much more tonight with my very special guest. Up first, I have Miss Fennell Norton. Fennell made her mark in politics in 2021 as she entered the race for the House of Delegates in Virginia as a Democrat in a very red part of the state. She didn't win, but was welcomed into the Badass Strategies by Network Nova. Fennell now energizes the weekly video podcast, Friday Power Lunch, drawing from her 26 years as a senior executive with Bank of America, where she led large teams, and her consulting experience at Accenture. Fennell brings a wealth of knowledge and a common sense political voice to her activist work. She is the sole proprietor at Common Sense Consulting in the Norfolk, Virginia area. Welcome back to the show, Fennell.
Hi, Pam. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Ron White. Ron is a Detroit, Michigan native and has worked in the auto industry for 46 years. He must have started when he was a baby, okay? He started as an hourly worker in skilled trades. He worked in design, engineering, and manufacturing management for General Motors for 34 years. And he was with Chrysler. I have to say Chrysler, y'all. I'm from Detroit, so I don't like Stellantis, but anyway, Chrysler Stellantis for 10 years. Ron has celebrated 40 years in ministry as of 2024. He is the associate pastor of Christian Tabernacle Church in Southfield, Michigan. And he is also a team chaplain for the Detroit Pistons and the Motor City Cruise basketball teams. Welcome back to the show, Ron.
Hi, Pam. Thank you for having me. Hi, Fennell.
Hi there, Ron. Pam? Ron, can you hear me?
I think she froze.
Yes, she did freeze. We'll give her a minute to see if she comes back. And then if she doesn't, we'll have to carry on her show.
Right. I'll let you take the lead.
She won't know what we're talking about exactly, but we'll see. But I am really excited to be here tonight. I do a Network Nova's Friday Power Lunch, and we do have an opportunity to talk about a bunch of different kinds of issues. And tonight I was going to be really excited to talk because we had Abigail Spanberger last week, who's running for, she's probably going to come back in, but she's running for governor in Virginia. And It's really exciting because she would be the first woman governor. And interestingly enough, at least as of now, her opponent is going to be a woman also, a Republican woman, and get this, a Black woman. So we're going to have Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic woman running for Virginia's governor, and a Black woman as a Republican running for Virginia's governor. So how interesting is that going to be?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be very interesting. I'll be keeping my eyes open for that one. Sure.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because I just Virginia and New Jersey are going to be the two places right now that will have races in 25 that will be decided, which is pretty fantastic because it's sort of like we're going to see where the trajectory is going. So what's it going to look like? So when November comes, November 4th for us, and whatever the date is for New Jersey, we'll see if the tides are turning. And I think we're all going to be working really, really hard, and hopefully will bring some optimism to what feels really, really sad and dark right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need a turning of the tide. It's interesting watching social media today with the number of folks that are saying, oops, we made a mistake.
Yeah, I have to tell this story, and Pam won't hear it, but her audience will. So I read a woman. Her name is Jess Piper, and she's from Missouri, and she writes just beautifully on Substack. And she was writing about a meeting that she was attending with the new DNC chair, and they were talking about farming, of course, because in Missouri and they're farming is big. And the conversation was about a TikTok that's been going around about this young farmer who has contracts worth something like $250,000, and the contracts are stalled now. They are all stopped as part of this whole Trump thing.
Hmm.
And so he's really upset because he thinks that he may go into bankruptcy because he doesn't have the funding, and he's already outlaid a bunch of money. And so everybody's feeling really sorry for him. But the first question you have to ask, which we all do, is who did he vote for?
Right.
Right. Well, do you know who he voted for?
Donald Trump.
He voted for Donald Trump. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, you know, I know I'm supposed to have some uh, empathy. What I don't have is sympathy, because at the end of the day, for so many people, whether it be women, people of color, um, immigrants, what we're dealing with right now, that's what he voted for until it
Right.
affected him. And now
Right.
he's unhappy.
I was
So I think,
urging prior to the election, I was urging everybody to read Project 2025. And I can be nerdy like that. I have the
mhm,
time now since I'm retired from the automotive industry. But they actually forecasted what they wanted to do in great detail, and yet I couldn't seem to get very many people to read it. So uh, when he started doing all the executive orders on day one, I was not surprised because they put it right there in the document. Um, and one of the things that they wanted to do in terms of their strategy was to bombard us with all of these executive orders so that the media couldn't keep up. The news cycle would change, really, really quick, um, and catch most people with their pants down, so to speak. So this is what they're doing. I'm not surprised. There's a lot more that they want to do, and I think if things continue the way that they are, they will uh, at least try to accomplish some of the things that's going to have an impact on the middle and lower classes.
yeah. Interestingly enough, and I'm glad you brought up Project 2025. I can't tell you how many flyers that I made up of Project 2025. We had really, really good information, and my goal was to get it into everyone's hands that I could.
Hmm.
And it was frightening, and I think that people sort of thought, "Oh well, this isn't going to happen. They're not going to do this." And I find that now that everybody is sort of living through it, I'm thinking that a lot of people want a do over. And I will say, Ron, I was kind of disappointed in that there were lots of people of color who and black people who just sort of dismissed this whole Project 2025 and the effects that it would have on us in particular.
Right.
And so I don't know. At the end of the day, women certainly came out. Black women certainly came out in full force. But in my view, any person of color, any woman who voted for this man who is now our president, I find it really hard to be forgiving for
Right.
what they're putting not just the country, but certain people who are already marginalized,
Right.
what they're putting them through, and I feel sad and angry about it. Not to mention what's coming. This is just the beginning. It's just the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. You look back at our history, uh, and you go back to Reconstruction when men were given the right, black men were given the right to vote, even though many of them couldn't read. They had an 80% turnout that first election, and um, it just boggles my mind that after all that we've known about Donald Trump and his behaviors and mentality and attitude and the things he said and done over the course of his life, that we would actually give him a second chance. And somehow or another, they have this narrative in their minds that he was going to be more helpful to us as people of color than the Democrats.
You know what I find interesting? I'll tell you two things that that I learned recently, because we're all learning history. We're all getting better at it. Recently, I was able to have a conversation with Steve Phillips. I don't know if you've ever read him before, but he has a podcast. It's called Democracy in Color, and he's out of San Francisco. And I just think he's fantastic. And he's written a book. It's called How We Win the Civil War. Because according to Steve Phillips, we're still in the Civil War. We haven't won it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found to be so interesting is that he talks about the fact that when Abraham Lincoln won the presidency, he won it with only 39% of the vote. The other went to two people who were pro slavery, and they couldn't decide who to vote for. So the vote was split. So
Mm-hmm.
he only won because of that split vote
Wow.
with 39%. Everybody else was interested in keeping slavery. And so I think I find that to be really important. I wonder if this is paying off. Nope. I find that to be really important in terms of understanding the country that we live in,
Right.
and I think it should be a warning to especially people of color to understand how we really have to stick together and how we
Right.
really have to understand the moment that we're in. And
Mm-hmm.
perhaps to some degree with this election, we might have missed the moment in
Yep.
understanding how important it was and that it really was our civil rights movement right here. And we might
Right.
have missed it just a bit. And hopefully, with these two elections coming up, we have an opportunity. Not one single person should stay home. Not one. One is too many. And that's the opportunity that we have to bring forth.
Yeah, and sadly, as I've talked to some former classmates, some of my peers, but mostly younger people, uh, I don't think they've still received the message. There are still people that are arguing for Trump and his policies, and it's mind-boggling to me, incomprehensible.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I think that it will be through conversations. We always have this, what is it going to take to get people to open up and understand what's actually happening? Because there's something really bad happening here, and you really can get consumed in it and feel like, oh my God, is there a way out? Especially for the people who are paying attention. So the people who are probably listening right now, those who are there, they understand the agenda, they understand the anxiety because they're paying attention and they understand it. And when you understand it, you are really terrified sometimes.
Right.
And I think it's easier for people to sort of just go on with their lives and just, not think about it until something hits them, like it's hitting people in Virginia right now. And I have neighbors and friends who work for the USAID and they no longer are employed. So how long will that last? And so I think the other thing that's important is everybody sort of thinks, oh my goodness, well, they needed to do something in DC without recognizing that 75 to 80% of federal employees are around the country in your neighborhood, your friends, my
Yep.
neighbors, people in your family. And so, and when you see someone acting like Elon Musk at CPAC this week is on stage running around with the chainsaw, do you understand how unfeeling that is for people who have lost their jobs? That they have zero empathy about what it feels like to the person who's at home this week. This
Right,
is what we're dealing with.
right. And I saw today that he's demanding that all federal workers uh, write a summary of what they've accomplished in the last week, and if they did chose to not participate, they would be fired.
Yeah,
Think about that.
well, here's what I really love about the incompetence of this government is that then Cash Patel had to come out and say, "Hey, all you folks at the FBI, don't do that because we can't afford to have your information just out in public, out in the atmosphere." So I think it's just funny. It's so funny to me how they talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. In terms of the way that they describe it as it's some kind of way that it's a person who's less qualified,
Right,
I think that they are demonstrating their competence right now, and it is not looking very good.
right, right.
You know, one of the things that Pam wanted me to talk about, and you would know this too, is I spent 26 years in corporate America, and I have even been on the committees for diversity, equity, and inclusion, so I know how it works. I
So
also
was
know
I.
that, yeah, but you also know how much opportunity was in it, right? That even though companies really tried to do it, I don't know of anybody who did it well.
Right.
You know, I remember sitting in reviews when we're looking at employees, and sometimes you'd have to say, "Well, well, let's talk about this person. Why don't you?" So it really, they just have no understanding of it whatsoever. Yay, she's back.
You guys will not believe what happened. I have been through the ringer and back. I am my um company, my internet company is gonna get an earful from me tonight,
Oh
tomorrow,
boy.
ever, ever. And Fennell, thank you, Ron. I heard Judy, thank you, classmate. She said, Pam, where are you? Fennell and Ron, and keep going. I said, hey, that's what you call teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you, guys.
I thought maybe Elon Musk had cut your system off.
You know what? I was thinking the same thing. I said, now, isn't this kind of strange? Listen, where are you guys at in the conversation? Oh, we got a lot of people in the chat.
Well,
Uh,
we couldn't see the I couldn't see the chat, so I don't know.
Put everybody in here. Oh my God, you guys, thank you so. You know what? You guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Look at everybody saying hi. Look at David, Shauna.
we were just talking about corporate DEI,
Oh
and
yeah.
Fennell was saying that she was on the committee. I was on the committee at Stellantis, and I quit. And I quit because I came into work one day and they decided to take the E out of DEI,
The equality out of the DNA,
the equity.
the equity.
So my thing was, if there's no equity in the program, why do I want to be a part of it?
Right, right.
And then we were stonewalled when we tried to get information from HR relative to the percentage of minorities that were in the leadership program for the corporation. We could never get that information. Think
Right,
about that. So if you don't know what your base is, how do you make an improvement?
right, right. Exactly. And you know what, guys? That very statistical point that you're making, Ron, is the very reason why this whole crap about how they're going about doing the mass firings doesn't make any sense. Because when you fire people, gosh, I had all of these charts up. Anyways, when you fire people, you have to be able to discern, okay, what percentages, how is it going to impact? You know, you're looking at all of these factors. You just don't massively destroy something because you mess up, right? And
Yeah,
it's just, and that's, it just doesn't make any sense. It
yeah.
just doesn't make any sense.
I think that I think that there is a um, I can't hardly believe that they are as incompetent as they are. So there has to be something that they are trying to accomplish, and whether it's getting us off and people not paying attention, I just don't know. But
Mhm.
what I think is is that it is to cause people to feel like we're feeling right now, like you feel really powerless and
Yes.
you're sort of watching this thing get destroyed. And
Right.
I think people are asking, oh my God, how do we put this back together? And
Yes.
so, as I was saying, I mean, think about the impact. So, when you fire people, they have to get unemployment from somewhere.
Exactly.
But is it really to break us down? And so I think that there is something else that they are trying to accomplish, and it is really to create chaos and to break us down. I
Hmm.
think Virginia, Maryland, California, those are the biggest blocks of federal workers.
Oh,
Um,
okay. What are they again? Virginia?
Virginia,
Mar-
California has the most, and
Okay.
then there's Virginia and Maryland. But then
Uh-huh.
in terms of how many people actually commute into Virginia from Maryland and DC,
Hmm.
we're talking upwards of 300,000 people based on just all of the commuting. So the impacts to Virginia, as all of this happens, will be huge.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
the question is, what is our governor going to do about it? Well, we have a Republican governor, and
Yes.
at this point, he's just sort of said, stand back. And, we really do need to see about these efficiencies and people are going to be okay. But he hasn't done anything. And so we do have our legislature, our Senate, and our House of Delegates. They are, we have the majority there. So they
My
will be.
win again, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. We have the majority. So they are really looking at what kinds of things can they put together to figure out, based on the implications, how are we going to handle some of that. So we're sort of in this place of limbo right now, as is, I'm sure, lots of places. I was saying to Ron that in Maryland, the governor has put up a website and they have information available to their to federal employees and what they can do. But it's going to be, I don't, what I can say is this: when I worked in corporate America, we sometimes had to close a site, and that might have been 300 people in my line of business, but it would be more in other lines of business. But I can't tell you about the care that we took of those employees, whether it was their severances and helping them find jobs, working with any government agencies to ensure that if there were other opportunities that they could go into other fields. It was with kid gloves that we handled these employees because they were important to us. And what this uh, administration is doing is acting like they are nothing, like they
Right.
are, like they
Right.
mean nothing. And people who are watching that, people
Hmm.
who voted for him and think this is okay, the way that it is happening, uh, that there is something very wrong with them. And I do think there's an opportunity and a time for us to call that out. And we can talk about that later, but I think this is time for a Frederick Douglass moment in terms of how the Democratic Party, as well as all of us, need to sort of think about how we're reacting to what we're seeing and feeling.
Right. Absolutely. You know what? I got to tell you guys this statistic before my internet acts up again. I was going to show you guys this chart, but in the federal government, okay, and overall, there's only about 13% of Black folks that make up the population in the US, but we comprise 18.2% of all of the federal workers in the United States. Check this out, guys. Hispanics comprise, and this surprised me. I did not know this. They comprise 18.9.
I think she went out again.
No.
Did you know?
Okay, you went out again.
I
So
know. Did you know that the Hispanic population comprises about 19% of the total US population?
yeah.
I I didn't know that. But and they make up 9.5% of the federal workforce. So just looking at these statistics, the browning of America is very real, which they know, and demographers have been saying, and thus the impact of what birthright citizenship, the elimination of that would do. Okay?
Yeah,
So
thankfully, that's been, put aside, at least for now. The courts have said, yeah, you can't do that. So we'll see what happens, but at least now that's on the sideline. But I think, Pam, to your point, this whole federal, laying off all of these employees was always going to disproportionately affect Black and brown people.
On. I don't know what's going on, but anyways, you guys in the chat, you know how I love. I'm gonna put you on while this thing is still working. Brian, I appreciate you with your information about your town halls. Oh, and you're in Kansas City. Okay. Great. Okay. Oh, Brian, why did you just vote for Jesus Christ up and down the ballot? You didn't vote for the president and stuff? I don't understand. I don't understand. Uh, okay. So, did you guys? I was going to show you something else, but have you, Ron? Did you talk about the auto industry at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Can you help explain to people that don't know, or some people that do? Maybe I don't know. Those from Michigan do. How significant the auto industry is married to our North American neighbors of Mexico and particularly of Canada.
Yeah, Mexico, Canada, and you also have to consider the other nations, China, Japan, South Korea. They all import into the United States, right? Germany. And the reality is that many of those nations have a very high gross domestic product in terms of manufacturing vehicles, components, raw material that they send into our country, right? And so these tariffs are going to put us in a pretty precarious situation in that I think there's a projection that the average vehicle is going to go up like $6,400 because of
Ooh,
tariffs.
ooh,
So if you're paying $50,000 for an SUV today, it's going to be $5,600 when the tariffs are implemented. The other thing is that I think normally we in a decent year we manufacture like 17 million vehicles in the nation,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of those out in California. Now Michigan used to be the hub, right?
mm-hmm.
Michigan is no longer the hub for assembling vehicles. That would be in
Really,
the South. That would be California. So
really,
based on the tariffs, it's going
mm-hmm,
to have an impact on production to the tune of 2 million vehicles. So we go from 17 million down to 15 million.
oh,
That's 700,000 jobs in
oh,
terms of losses in the assembly plants, the component manufacturers. We've always had issues in the last couple of years getting components just because of the fact that we went through the pandemic.
uh-huh,
And in my 46 years of manufacturing, that was like the first time that I've seen a plant shut down for more than one day,
mm-hmm,
because as long as vehicles are selling, we're going to be running
right,
5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, whether
wow,
that be General Motors, Ford, or Chrysler, right? If the American people are demanding our vehicles, we're gonna open up those plants and get the most out of those plants and the most out of the people. The benefit is that people are allowed to work overtime and make a lot of money, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, that's going to be impeded severely based on the tariffs, because the thing is the OEMs, they are not going to absorb that cost.
no,
They're going to transfer that to you and I, the consumer,
exactly,
and the suppliers are not going to go bankrupt. They're going to pass that cost along, right? So
right,
it's going to be a challenge to go through through the tariffs. And the other thing is that we have good trade relationships with uh, Mexico. We have good relationships with Canada, right?
oh yes,
That's
yeah,
going to be highly strained now,
it's
and there
already,
will be retaliation.
Yeah, yeah. And they're already taking our stuff off their shelves of stores and stuff. You can see it on social media. They said they're not ordering any of these special liquors and stuff that they would order from a bunch of red states that a bunch of red states make and what have you. I don't even know what they are, but they're taking them off of their shelves and stuff. They are serious. They are so, and Ron and I, Fennell, grew up in Detroit.
Mhm.
And so going over to Canada was like going to the suburbs. And you'd go to dinner and everything. And I've never, ever experienced any negativity from Canadians, never, ever. And if you're on the waterways, the Detroit River separates us. And if you're on the boat and they're on the boat, everybody's waving from the boat. I mean, who can nobody it's nobody checking for you. You're a Canadian or you're American or whatever. And this is just this thing is just really just such an ugly,
I had in my
unnecessary.
career, I had the opportunity to work down in Juarez, Mexico.
Oh,
Uh,
did you?
yeah, and so we had good relationships with them. I was a part of transferring latch products down to when I worked for Delphi down to
Mm-hmm.
Juarez, Mexico. We had a engineering center down there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it was good relationships. We were able to train and bring up the Mexican engineers to be good product engineers. Canada, since I worked at Chrysler,
Mm-hmm.
just across the water, there's our Windsor plant that makes the Chrysler vans,
Mm-hmm.
and we shared employees. Some employees would come over here and work, and then some of our employees from the United States would go over into Canada to
Mm-hmm.
work, depending on what their level of expertise was in engineering or manufacturing.
Yeah.
So again, healthy relationships are going to be impeded going forward.
Yeah. I want to say something, Pam. I do think that it will be really important that Canada and Mexico and all the others hold the line. Because
Yes.
if they give in, then that there is nothing worse. They must not give in. Our European partners, who will, I don't know if they'll still be allies or not, but they will have to hold the line, because
Mm-hmm.
if they give in, then Putin and Trump and they all win, and that would be a scenario that would be really, really bad. So
Right.
I am glad that they're holding the line, because if they don't, then that means that it's less hopeful for us. And I think some of the questions that people are asking, that I'm seeing here in the chat now,
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of frightening, like, what is it that he has? All, three branches of a government, basically. and
Mm-hmm.
and and really, at the end of the day, all that stands is we the people.
That's
And we
right.
the people is a little bit scary, because we the people did not show up the way that they needed to in this last election. And you sort of have to ask yourself, why was that? Why were we not able to get this message across? And what must we do now to sort of shed some of this powerlessness
Mm-hmm.
that we have? And I think that's what your show and others have to help us do.
Well, you know what? There's a couple of things I want to bring to light. One of them is that there is some real question marks now about the election integrity and if there was not some manipulation that happened in certain states with the data. And there's a gentleman that he was on Roland Martin's show, and I'm going to try to see if I can't capture him. He was doing the statistics, and he was saying, you know what, the math ain't mathing on some of these things. In particular, in Pennsylvania, he mentioned Pennsylvania in particular, and the fact that she didn't win any of those swing states. And if you recall, her crowds were tremendous. The lines were tremendous. I have a friend in the Maryland area where she knew of two women that voted, and somehow with their voting machines, they were able to see their votes cast, and their vote for Kamala look it went to Trump. They said that they saw that they voted for Trump and they did not. Just two cases that we know of like that. But just bizarre stuff. And one other thing, oh gosh, I'm about to lose it. That was the main thing about the voter irregularity. But it's just the other thing is that there's just now information out. It hasn't been all vetted 100%, but it kind of tracks about allegedly Trump being recruited by the KGB in 1987 when he was a 40-year-old businessman, and also at the time that he was really down and out with money and a lot of bankruptcies. And his code name was Krasnov.
I've
Uh,
never heard anything about that. So
I've read about three or four different articles that are coming out where they're trying to do more investigation on that. This allegedly comes from another person who was a spy, and he's a 71-year-old gentleman. And my only thing is it what does all of this thing, our abrupt change in our policy towards Ukraine and towards Putin, he's talking about Putin coming on the soil.
yeah, that's a little scary. I think what I always think about is that, which is why we've had three branches of government, is
Hmm.
that we have these 53 Republican senators, and we have these people in the House, and it only takes a few of them to
Hmm.
do the right thing. And so what's alarming to me is
Hmm.
that they can watch what's happening and just not do anything, that they just don't care about us, that they voted in RFK, who is a nut, basically. So I think this is where we the people have to do something. And I often think about it, it's like, why are we not in the streets? Why are we, it's like
Right.
everybody's just sort of like waiting for something to happen. And we see this stuff happening all around us, and we're just like, when we have just normal days, people are just going along on Facebook and they're just happy, like everything is fine. I'm
No,
just like, everything is not fine. It's
no,
not fine.
it's not
And so
fun
so
at
the
all.
question is, how do we get people to know that it's not fine? And I do think that that comes from us, but it also comes from our leaders. And so we need our leaders to show that the house is on fire. So
Right,
however they have to figure that out, they need to figure out how to make sure that everybody in every state understands that everything is not all right and that this is far from normal.
right, right. That's right. That's right. And it's not normal. And just like I said about, and I know it sounds really weird for me to talk about what I've read in a couple of spaces about this gentleman making this claim because he was a spy himself, and I can't pronounce the name of the country that he was in, but um, it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense because because we do know that back in the day, when he first ran for office, his son Eric got a little too mouthy on an interview and talked about how the Russians or Putin had invested in some of their golf courses. And so I remember the reporter asking more questions, and we didn't hear from Eric for a long time. In fact, it's rare that you hear Eric be interviewed at all anymore. But that kind of information, it's just really strange, you know.
Yeah.
And, and why and I think it needs to be investigated more, and I'm pretty sure that it will be. I'm confident that it will be. Let's see.
Well, yeah, I want to say one thing. I see that there's a comment in, and I've seen some other folks, whether they were being funny or not, say that they voted for this person or that person.
Hmm.
And I've been reading a lot about Frederick Douglass because I think he was just an amazing abolitionist of all the things that he's done to
Hmm.
to overcome slavery. And if anybody knows the history of him, it's pretty amazing. But there is one thing from Frederick Douglass that I think is so important. And of course, back then, Republicans are what Democrats are today, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, crisscross. So I'll just say it the way that he would say it today. And what he said was, and this was, he was at a black convention, and they didn't understand why he would do a black convention, but he said, I'm going to do it. but it was, I guess it was maybe perhaps that there was some black people who were black men who were thinking of voting for what would be the Republican Party today. And Frederick Douglass said that any person who can put two ideas together can certainly know, looking at both parties, that one is better for you than the other. And so I think that's really important when we think about folks who stayed home or couldn't decide who to vote for. Frederick Douglass back then in 1852 or whenever said, if you can put two ideas together, you can put two ideas together, you can look at the two people and see that one's better for you than the other. And that's what
Right.
always got me about folks who said, well, I didn't know enough about Kamala Harris. You knew him since 2016 and he didn't do nothing good for you. And you looked at this woman and all that she did, vice president, attorney general, prosecutor, and you said, yeah, I'm going to do him. So I
Mhm.
just think about Frederick Douglass.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh wow.
Can I say something as
Yeah,
a pastor?
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
a couple of things. Number one, there's always been a direct relationship with the amount of money that have been raised through the campaign for the president, right? What we saw with Kamala Harris and the amount of money that she was able to raise through
Mm-hmm.
small donations,
Mm-hmm.
it did not compute when it came to the votes that they were saying that she had, right?
Right.
Um, Large donations, we understand that there are people that'll give millions of dollars, but they only get one vote,
Right.
right? The
Right.
smaller contributions, the $20, the $15 are more of an indicator of what the results are going to be at the end of the day.
Right.
And again, it did not measure up to what we've seen historically.
Mm-hmm.
So that should raise some questions. Number two, I hear people all the time say, "Well, God is in control." Look, I believe that with all my heart, all my soul. I've been preaching for 40 years. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but there is an obligation as a U.S. citizen to be a good steward, to be a good steward. And for people to tell me that they chose to stay at home, okay, now you're getting what you got.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think God expects us to get involved, to and it's just not for a presidential election. We should be studying what happened today. We got elections coming up. If we're
Mm-hmm.
not happy with tariffs, because we're all going to be paying more,
Mm-hmm.
how you like the price of a dozen eggs today?
Mm-hmm.
What about those cheap gas prices? I was just out in San Francisco. You know what a gallon of gas costs in San Francisco?
$6.
$5.90.
Okay, I was close. I said
Yeah,
six
you were right
bucks.
there.
Bucks. Yeah.
And so the promises that we were made by this current administration, um, they're actually going to take us in the opposite direction
Mm-hmm.
And we should talk about it every single day.
every
You should
single
talk
day.
every single day. You should post about it. You should talk about it. You should tell your friends about it. Everyone should talk about. They were writing on the gas tanks. Biden did this, when the gas prices were high. Well, what are they writing now? And this is where I'm going to take us right back to Frederick Douglass again, because we can tend to be a little bit timid. But what
Mm-hmm.
did he say? He says, sometimes you don't need a rain. You got to have the storm. You got to have a whirlwind. You got to have an earthquake. And that is not just for our public officials. That is for all of us to raise our voices, be brave and bold, talk to people about what's going on, because it will only change if people understand. And sometimes we have to talk to them. We got to say to them, you did not do enough. If you thought that just voting was enough in 2024, then you were sadly mistaken, because there were people that you needed to talk to, your friends, your family,
Mm-hmm.
people partying and dancing and acting like there's no tomorrow. You
Right.
wanted to talk politics, they didn't have time for that. We
Right.
have to know what's going on. And
Right.
now is our opportunity once again in Virginia, New Jersey. You can write postcards, you can make donations. There's 3 races happening, congressional races. You can participate in those. It's the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. There are all kinds of ways that people can participate, and now is the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Department of Governmental Efficiency.
Yes.
So I'm a continuous improvement guy in manufacturing. I would always learn a system and look at it and figure out how we can improve the process to take the waste out, right?
Hmm.
And so this is what our Elon Musk is saying that he's going to do, but he doesn't understand the processes.
Exactly.
How can you make something more efficient and you don't really understand what goes on the floor? You
Exactly.
can't,
Exactly.
because you know what?
Exactly.
You're going to cut the head off and it
Right.
won't be functional.
Right. And
And
that's
that's
what
what
he's
we're going. And here's a guy that talks about being efficient. The reason that his companies can operate the way that they operate, number one, he subcontracts stuff out of or sources stuff out of the country. Number two, he's a person with SpaceX. He's got received $20 billion over the last 15 years in tax breaks, in subsidies, and contracts.
hmm
So when you look at where all the money is going, it's to guys like this.
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Hey, Renee, I
And
see
yet he
Renee.
wants to take somebody's $100,000 salary away that works for the federal government because they aren't doing anything. They're doing something, and you know what? When you eliminate them, you're going to find out what they actually did.
Yeah,
Right.
you know what, Ron, to that point, and Renee is putting it in the chat, and I'm glad she is the phone number because they have taken those phone lines down a couple of times because of the phone calls that are coming in, which is
Did
pretty
they?
awesome. So that's something that people can do.
I
But
think
to your point, Social Security, people who get Social Security checks, it's on an average of $67 a day.
hmm
Elon Musk, through his government contracts, you know what that is? $8 million a day.
eight
So
mil
that's what, 8
eight
million.
million
8
dollars.
million. And he's worried about my mama's $67. And so we have to tell those stories every day.
Right,
73 million people on Medicaid, 813 millionaires. Why are you talking about our taxes? I don't even want to hear it.
I don't want to
That's
hear
the
it.
stories we got to tell.
They're not even paying taxes. So
right,
shut up.
right.
You know, but yet you're using our tax dollars, and the first agencies they got rid of were those that were regulatory, that had told Musk, look, you cannot fly your spaceships and then it create havoc all over the world and shoot out debris all over the world and injure people and cause harm and all this, and these are the fines you have to pay. The FAA guy was the first to get let go because he was the one sanctioning him. And it's been this constant type of thing where we're sanctioning people. And I listen, totally off script from all of my notes. One of the things, the letter that everybody received in the mail about the email that they had to respond by 12 p.m. midnight Monday, or they'll be fired. A lot of people are saying don't respond. Their bosses are saying don't respond. And Cash Patel at the FBI particularly told his people don't respond, that
Hmm.
he will be taking care of it himself. I'm gonna tell y'all, I don't know what to think. You know, I don't think that we're as safe as Americans because we've gotten rid of FBI agents and people like that. And, these people do national threats and stuff, international threats and what have you. I don't know. I just don't know what to think.
Yeah, I think a piece of information, and my husband said this, and I haven't verified it for myself, so someone might know it in the chat, that all of the investigative information for police officers who had been tracked for doing, things that are not kosher, that's
Right.
all been erased. And
Yes.
if that doesn't make the hair stand up on black men's head, I don't know what does, because that is something really scary because we are more susceptible to behavior that is not appropriate. And for police officers to sort of feel like, you can do anything you want, that has to be a little nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that was said about in the federal government, that those, I guess they were federal officers, or it I don't know how that database works or whatever, they use the word federal in that, that it was erased. I mean, it's just, it's scary what they're talking about, how they're doing things. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think so. I think so. I think, at the end of the day, when I think about all of this, yeah, we can't count on senators to save us. It will be the masses of people who will stand up. That is really all we have. And
Mhm.
I do think that for people who are, the F around and find out, I think that people are finding out now. And so there have been, I've seen on the news that there have been different town halls, and
Yeah,
Republicans in the town halls are, that's why we have to get this information out. That's why we have to tell the stories, and be really open and visceral about what is happening and the cruelty of it all.
the
We must tell
cruelty.
these stories. Yeah. But,
Yes.
Pam, I wanted to say something else about diversity that I think is really important.
Please do.
So I wrote a little piece, and it was called "What is a Black Job?" And I thought it was important because it was all framed around this whole diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. And really, the important thing was when he said it the very first time,
Mhm.
that immigrants are taking your black jobs. We thought it was kind of funny, but I never thought it was funny because I knew that he wasn't really talking about that kind of black job. When we said, "Oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a dentist," he was talking about a different kind of job. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, when all is said and done, what I think is most important is when people use the acronym of DEI, it's really nebulous, and they can make it mean anything that they want.
Hmm.
So my challenge to everyone is to always say diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that when someone says, I don't want that, I want you to say, I don't want any diversity. And then I want you to tell me why you think that's good. And when you say, I don't want any inclusion, then I want you to tell me why that's good. Because you will rarely hear them on TV say anything but the acronym. They will
Mhm.
never say diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't want any diversity. They won't say that. So we have to hold them to it, and hold anybody else who's
Mhm.
having a conversation with us about that to say, now I'm going to need you. Now, what was that you're saying? What does that mean exactly? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Make them say it so that we can call them out at every word every time we hear it. And that person is exactly right. That is their new N word. So we make them say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do not let them say DEI to you. Got that
Yeah,
now.
no, that's a good approach. I
Mhm.
support that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to show you guys before I was so faithfully glitched tonight. There was a video that talked about the doxing of employees, and many of them were African American that worked in science research and health research and what have you. And they were doxing them because they happened to be these scientists who are doing research in health in the CDC and the NIH and all these places. And they were even putting out their, oh, look at them, they're a DEI hire. So as he's getting into the databases, that was another thing that they were doing and putting them in harm's way by doxing them.
Yeah.
Just
It is cruel. We have to keep on saying how cruel it is. It is a cruel, cruel administration, and we have to keep reminding everyone of that. And I also think that we need to keep reminding people. My husband would say sometimes, I would say, babe, this country is really kind of racist. And they were like, no, 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 no. I think the folks are finding now that it is way more racist than people sort of forgot about it. You sort of, you live in your life and you just sort of forgot about it. And what we find is that it is really racist. I don't know who this person. Well, yeah, Ed woke. You're right. Woke is also the
mhm,
other N word, and so I do think that we have to sort of keep our guards up. There are good people. There is this stripe of people who are always going to be about multicultural, multiracial, and all of that, because that's what we need to win. But you have to be reminded that at the end of the day, 50% of Republicans or white people have never voted for a Democrat. I'm just saying. So
Right.
that should give you a little bit of guidance right now about what we're dealing with. And there is good people, but I'm just saying to you that I don't know when the last time that we've ever had more than 50%, haven't had 50% of white people vote for a Democrat. So that's why this multiracial coalition is so important, and we need everybody to bring their part to the table.
As
Mm.
a again, I want to talk as a pastor. Um, for the pastors that were quiet prior to the election, because many of our pastors have been bought
Yes.
by the Republican Party.
Preach
But I
that.
also want to say that when your membership starts losing their jobs, you can kiss those tithes and offerings goodbye. And that will, my friend, my brother, have an impact on your ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that you go out and advocate Republican or Democrat, but you should share facts with people
Mm-hmm.
and let them, if we as teachers teach people how to make good decisions, give them the facts and then let them make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by all means advocate for people to participate in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Amen. Amen on that mini sermon. Because
So
that's what we need. We
it,
need people to speak the truth to power.
we,
And you know, really what we're seeing now is Christian nationalism, where they're saying, "Oh, this was a Christian nation." Well, you know what? If Christianity was based in slavery, and we want to get into all of that, we don't really want to assign that to the God that we know and love. We don't want to assign that kind of uh, religion to the God we know and love. We don't want to do that.
yeah,
We
you'll
want.
have to do a whole show on white Christian nationalism because that is some scary stuff right there.
I have, you know what? I have before all of this blew up because my pastor is actually an expert in it. He's written 2 books, and I'll do it again. I'll have to do it again. Ooh, you guys are jumping in this chat. Oh, it's a lot. It's a
And
lot.
she was exactly right. People have used the 501c for
Hmm.
not speaking up. But you know what? We can communicate strategically.
Hmm.
We have people that have gone to seminary and they've learned how to communicate a message without being, uh, blunt with the message. And
Hmm.
so again, I think if we as preachers and teachers can teach people how to make good decisions and give them the facts, let them make the decision in terms of who they're going to vote for and if they're going to vote.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Pam, I agree with Ron completely. You know, I really tried to reach out to pastors in my community. I live in a rural community now, and I
Hmm.
really try to really want them to understand the importance of this election and what the impacts would be to their congregation. And I got some, but I didn't get enough. And I have to tell you, I am oftentimes I'm really angry. I'm really angry because I think that people let us down, that they could have done more. And I have to pull myself back sometimes because I just feel like, okay, it's over now, so let's start all over and figure out. But I just thought that I felt like I was carrying this burden, and I thought, Jesus, I got this burden of on my shoulders about how worried I am about what's going to happen to everyone, and everybody else is like everything is okay. And I think now what will happen is it will be up to everybody to know that it wasn't okay. And
Hmm.
now what are we going to do? And shows like this hopefully give direction to and guidance to the steps that we're going to have to take now.
Yeah. We have to do something, and all of us can do something. I'm glad to hear, Fennell, that they took down the phone lines for a little bit, because I know I was sharing that number left and right. I was calling it at any time of night. I didn't care, because that's the great thing about it. It's open 24/7. And if you know who you want to talk to, you just tell the computer who you want to talk to, and the switchboard just clicks you over there, and you can leave your message.
Yeah,
So,
we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, and she said, if you want to do something, make phone calls. And she said, don't just make phone calls to Democrats. She said, we know what the problem is, but you
mhm,
can make them to Republicans too, because they're supposed to be representing all of us. And
Yes,
so
yes.
I had a person the other day said she made calls to all 50 Republican senators, 53 of
yes,
them, And so, and that's what she does. Whatever it is that gets the energy out for you, that you can feel like you're making a difference, do that thing, but
Yep,
do something.
absolutely.
Uh-oh. Well, Ron, are we going to have to end the show for Pam?
I'm
Pam?
here.
See that.
I'm here. Something else. I'm gonna. Spectrum is gonna get an earful from me.
Oh,
They're gonna get an earful from me because I went and checked my router and everything, and there's nothing. I even cut my television off because making sure it was not, because I was having a few connection problems before I even had you guys on, and so I said, let me make sure I got everything working, and then you all know what happened. But y'all know that this show is live and unfiltered. What you see is what you get.
so so Pam, my last thing for everybody is, I think the two things that I would end is diversity, equity, inclusion always, never
Yeah.
the acronym, and to do the thing that you're going to do, whether it be joining any kind of committee, Democratic committee,
Hmm.
if it is joining a group, writing postcards, writing letters,
Hmm.
making donations. Those are all things that people can do, and get with someone so you can try some different kinds of tactics, because we got to throw everything we have against the wall.
Right, right. And just how, like, they're overwhelming us, we have to overwhelm them. And February 28th, we're not supposed to buy a thing, not gas, not toilet paper, not nothing. So if you got to get your Kleenex, your allergy medicine, your prescriptions, your gas, get it before February 28th, so we keep making impact, because I'm understanding that the that Walmart and Target, they have all been feeling a difference because people aren't showing up there. I know it's been tough not going to Target because I haven't gone to Walmart since November, and that was a big change. That was a big change for me, because once I realized how much money they had given to Trump, and what they were, they rolled back the DEI things. I was really disappointed, very disappointed. Yeah.
Go back diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes. 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 I was supposed to say the whole thing out. That's right. I didn't say it, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. I see Dawn, you're joining your NAA. Listen, Dawn, I know that she is in a rural county here in North Carolina, and I'm glad that the national office has finally said something on social media that was not about entertainment. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Yeah.
I'll say this last thing is, and that is, I think over the years, um, black buying power, I think, is something like 538 billion over a period of time, and it
Hmm.
keeps on growing. We have power. We
Hmm.
have real power, and
Yes.
and we can use that power. And money seems to be the thing that
Mhm.
moves people. And so, if
That's
we can get everybody engaged and say, we are in this, and we have got to look out for each other, because no one is going to look out for us but us. We
that's
can
right.
demonstrate our power with our pocketbook.
Right. And I know that the Hispanic people, the Latino people, I want to use the correct term, they have been talking about it on social media, what their power is, and they're doing it. They're doing it. I want to thank Fennell and Ron too, for you guys. You saved the day on the show. I'm so happy because I was panicked. I was like, you know what? I can't get on. I don't know what to do. I just, let me text them. And then Judy texts me. It always works when you got these classmates from Cass Technical High School. What can I say? We've been knowing each other 45 years, and you don't let us down. You guys just always are in the cut, always looking out for one another. I appreciate it so much. So
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Listen, I'm going to say, oh, here, Renee wants to say thank you to you. Oh, me too. Listen, teamwork. This was a great example of teamwork. Vanessa and Ron held it down. I always call Ron my twin because we were born on the same day.
Right.
I was born in the afternoon and he was in the morning at two different hospitals in Detroit. How about that?
There you go.
So we made it a whole show without calling each other twin.
Hey, Ron, it was great
Can I
being
have
with
one last word? So,
Yes.
so we know what's happening in this country to people of color historically. We kind of understand what's going on existentially. And I have 10 grandchildren. I want to make sure that everybody that's on this broadcast gets off the sideline and get involved. Not just for what's going on today, but for our grandchildren that will be carrying our legacies on tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Bless you for now.
That's your,
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Well, listen, thank you all so much. We're going to wave off good night while I'm still online. All right.
Goodbye.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for your
Bye.